All right, so we're going to spend a third and final week just working on a practical thing, thinking about trying to learn to memorize the King's List. It's helpful to commit certain data sets to memory in your Bible studies. And I like the kind of a common process of or method of teaching people to do something broken down into these parts, right? Do it in front of them, and then you guide them in doing it. Then you watch them doing it, and then you just let them do it. Well, I'm not going to be there to watch you doing it at home, but I am hoping to let you just go do it. So maybe if I guide you this one time, we'll take this opportunity to see if you can do the list, maybe with a little guidance and help. It might be easier for you at home, having had the practice of working through it. So I want to ask you, how many kings, if we include, well, let's ask about the Northern Kingdom first, since it fell first. What was the time span of the kingdom period in general, the whole kingdom period? Can you tell me that? Who was the first king when they were united under one king? Right, what year was that? $1050. 1050, right, BC. So you have Saul, and then who are the next two kings? David, his son Solomon. How many years each? Yep. So we'll say 40 years each. So this is, say, 970. Actually, 931. So around 931, what happens? Yeah, there's a split into how many parts? Right. How do we identify those two parts? Right. Split. North. 10 tribes. And what's the name of the north? Israel. Yep, Ephraim. Why is that? Right, they're the largest tribe, and also their first king comes from the tribe of Ephraim. Also, interestingly, Joseph's son is Ephraim. So you have kind of Joseph in the north and David in the south. What's the name of the southern kingdom? What year did the northern kingdom fall? To who? What year did the southern kingdom fall, and to who? Good. Good. These are things we should know. We really should know these things. Right? It's also helpful to know the list of kings that come after the United Kingdom, right, during the split. So we'll say Israel, and then Judah. We'll put Israel first, reading from left to right, since they fell first in 722 BC. Right? I'll underline that, 722, 586. How many kings were there in Israel, the northern kingdom? Good. So 19. How many in Judah, if you include the female usurper who was a mother of a king who took the throne for a while? Good. Right. Israel. So, how did I tell you to think about memorizing the kings in the northern kingdom? What do we break it up into? Their dynasties, right? I told you that we could debate about that last group. Do you remember what I call the last group? Yeah, I could call them usurpers, assassins. It was just a downward spiral, kind of like the southern kingdom. where there's a bit of chaos at the end. You could combine two of those kings, Menahem and Pekahiah, because they're father and son, into a dynasty. But sometimes people don't, because they just think of that as a time of extreme abject volatility. But for the sake of ease and grouping, we'll put those 5 usurpers together at the end, and we'll count 5 other dynasties before it, right? So how do we break this up by number? Right, so there's 2, 2, 1. Yeah, now you get into the bigger guys. Right, so the 5 is the final dynasty. And then the last 5 is sort of the usurpers. All of these dynasties got going through intrigue and assassination. So how many good kings were there? Yeah, we'll say 0 good kings. How many good kings were there in Judah? 8. Just the scripture. We're following the scripture that says that they did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, ostensibly related to keeping the covenant's terms. 8 good kings. Included. All right, so who are the first 2? Right, so you got, well, yeah, you have, so it's good. So let's do this. This could help you, yeah. Jeroboam, and what do we call him? Jeroboam what? 1, because that presupposes what? That there's another one. Yeah, there's another one. So then you already let the cat out of the bag here. So let's say first one is Rehoboam. Similar name to Jeroboam, so it could help you. Right? Helps you. So you got Jeroboam 1, Rehoboam. Rehoboam is the son of who? Solomon, right. And Jeroboam is from the tribe of Ephraim, right? He's not from Judah. So then you got Jeroboam. Let's kind of name the names of the other dynasties. Who starts this dynasty? Sort of the first 2, it's easiest for me to remember them kind of as I work them out and fill them out together. The 2 and the 2, I do them together. But we could start to fill in some other things here right off the bat just to make it easier on us overall. Who's the first big dynasty? Omri. Good. Yeah. He's the one ultimately who's going to found what capital city? Samaria. Right. It was, the capital of the north was Tirzah. He's going to found Samaria. He's also going to have a rival for a little while, contending with him, Tibni. But that's another level of a more advanced level. So who's the biggest dynasty? God gave it to him as a reward. What did he give it to him as a reward for? Yeah, he was commanded to go judge and wipe out Omri's dynasty. Exactly. And then it's a good idea to remember at least the first usurper right off the bat, easily. Well, I told you to think in terms of retribution. It's a version of the verb for shalom, which means to make whole. Right? God's getting payback. Shalom. Shalom, right? Right. So then let's work out these 4, and I think then it helps us to get this 5th one. So who's Jeroboam's son? What did I teach you to remember that? Yeah, he's named after who? What famous person? For strange fire. Yeah, if you go and you just write this down a few times, you're going to memorize it. You just got to go home and write it down. Write it down a few times. Nadab, like Nadab and what's his brother? Abihu, right? Yeah, it's spelled like that with a J, I think. Jeroboam 1, and he has Nadab. And how did I teach you to memorize who assassinated him? Bad, you could say, or he bashed him, right? So Nadab, the strange fire one, is judged. He's bashed. Sha. What's the memory device for that? Who else was bashed and where? Goliath, yeah, it starts with a name. Goliath was bashed in the head by David in the valley of Elah, right? And then the next guy who assassinates Elah was only king for a zip, namely how long? 1 week, yeah, 7 days. Who's that? Zimri, right. And then Zimri, either you can remember Omri as the first of the great houses by the similarity to Zimri, right? Or you could remember Zimri because of the similarity to Omri, but they're right next to each other, so that's a help built in by God, right? The Imri, the Re at the end. So we're just going to put 7 days like a creation week. A zip. Remember the Z, Zimri. And then this first house, it should be pretty easy because it works out in a pattern related to the other kingdom and ties us neatly, brings us right to Jehu. So who is his famous, one of the most famous of the, or I should say infamous, of the evil sons of the kings? Ahab, right? And then Ahab has a son with a kind of similar name, and that the way I memorize this is he and his brother are going to be represented the same names in the other kingdom, just in the flipped order. What is it? Ahaziah. Yeah. Yeah, to the false prophets. Yeah. He's rebuked. Yeah, so you see the interaction with Elijah and Elisha, and actually at the end of Elijah's ministry, God encourages him that Jehovah is sovereign, even though it seems that the victory on Mount Carmel was hollow, Pyrrhic, it seems that way, it failed, but actually God is sovereign, and he is working out his plan through a remnant. He says, I have 7,000 who haven't bent the knee. So he says to him, I'm going to show you that I control the world, not always by the storm, by the fire, by the earthquake, but by a whisper, my sovereign word. So I'm going to have you now to go appoint who will be the next king of Syria, right? I think it was Hazael. And he'll judge the northern kingdom for its sinfulness. And you'll appoint your successor, which was who? Elisha, who will have a double portion. He'll judge Israel as well. And Jehu would be the next king of the northern kingdom, and he would judge the house of Omri. Right? The wickedness of Ahab and how the house of Omri would be wiped out. So who's the one who goes? He's got a shortened version of his name. He goes with Ahaziah, and you're going to see in Judah they're flipped. It's the J name first, and then Ahaziah. And remember, this is where you get the Jehu kills this king, and he kills the king who's visiting, who's this guy's cousin. So who is he? Who is it with a J? You just got to remember Ahaziah and his brother Jehoram, which, how do you shorten that? Joram, right. If you remember that, that helps you. Now you just got to remember, well, there's a Jehoram Ahaziah in the other list, right? And so this Jehoram is killed, and then who would have been killed in this other list by Jehu if their order is flipped? Huh? Yeah, the Ahaziah in the south is killed at the same time that Jehoram is. Right? Ahaziah was visiting Jehoram. So Jehu, remember, so it should be easy for you to remember Jehu being the head of the great dynasty because he's rewarded for judging Omri's house. So that also leads you to remember, oh, he's next. He's next. Jehu, kind of like, this is how I remember it, like George Foreman, really likes his name, so he's got a bunch of what? J's, right? So you just got to remember that there are 5 J's in a row from Jehoram, Jehu. Who's the first J? And this, what helps me is that this is the first name of the last four after Josiah in the list of Judah. Same name. Jehoaz, right. Jehu, Jehoaz. Not to confuse you, but that Jehoaz is also known as Shalom. But it's not brought up a lot. You don't have to, you won't lose sleep over it, but yeah. So Jehoaz. Yep, Jehoash. There's another one of them as well in this list. What's the shortened version of Jehoash? Joash. Yeah, Joash. And then who's the last J? You know, we've been waiting on a big J since Jeroboam 1 presupposes Jeroboam 2. Right, see, there's not that many clunky, difficult patches here for you to get your mind around. If you write this down several times in one sitting, you could get this. You could totally get this. This is one of those little bit of clunky ones, but you have the memory device. Oh, there's 5 J's in a row. Jehu, like George Foreman, really liked his J name. So you need 3 sons of Jehu, Jehoash, Jehoash, Jeroboam 2. And then there's a weird little curveball. And there's one like this over here too. Right? This list ends with, it's like from A to Z, right? So it ends with Z here, but you might say that the dynasties end with a Z. Right? This list is going to end with a Z, and the dynasties end here with a Z before you get the 5 usurpers at the end. Who's the Z that jumps in to break up the 5 J's in a row? Yes, Zechariah. Hope this is helpful. All right, so I helped you by telling you Shalom. Who is next? So it's a couplet. It's the only 2 that are related, that are father and son. So you got to memorize this, just like the last 4 over in Judah. You got to memorize this. This is just from practice. Starts with an M. What is it? Menahem, right? And then his son's name is going to be similar to the usurping officer who kills his son and takes power. Pekahiah. It's very much the way it looks. The way we write Hebrew in English it looks exactly the way it would be pronounced if you knew the Hebrew, which I find very helpful, actually. Pekahiah. And then, so what's the similar name? Pekah. And a peg for you to hang some memory on. What's he known as? He's part of the Syro-Ephraimite crisis, right? Where Ahaz is terrified of Pekah, the son of Remaliah. Well, I don't want to get you off track, but he's saying it in an insulting way. And the other king that he's teaming up with is Rezin, the king of Syria, against Ahaz. That's in the whole controversy with the Neo-Assyrian big empire arising. And they got to figure out what they're going to do. And Ahaz in the south decides to make an alliance, or rather give his allegiance to Assyria for protection, whereas Pekah views him then as an enemy. He needs to replace Ahaz, the king of Judah, because he won't cooperate along with him and Rezin, the king of Syria. So they want to install the puppet Tabeel. That's a very famous, important story in the Old Testament. That's Isaiah chapters what, roughly? The story of the virgin's birth sign. Some people call it the Syro for Syria, Ephraimite for Israel, crisis. Right? So it's Judah is in a crisis because they're doing battle with Syria and Ephraim, also known as Israel. What is it? 7 to 12. Yeah. But these are, I'm giving you there an example of some kind of information you would hang on this peg. Right? That's a good example of information you would associate with this. He's the son of Remaliah. Oh, the Syro-Ephraimite crisis, or whatever name for it best helps you. Right? Oh, the virgin, the sign of the virgin birth, that part of Isaiah. So it's him and Ahaz and Rezin and Tabeel. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4. You need one more. Who is this? Again, like I said, you really got to memorize these 5, however you can. Hoshea, right? Good job. Hoshea. So we already know the first king of Judah, right? What's a help device for you to remember? How many good kings are there? 8. So I tend to kind of think of the list in terms of the good kings. But you need to get started, in my mind, just remember the beginning. You get to the first good king, and then it's like dominoes. Boom, 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 boom. Right? You just got to get to the first good set of good kings. And so I remember, right, that there's 2 bad, right, 2 bad, and then there's 2 good. Who's Rehoboam's bad king son? Yeah, you just got to remember that, the R and the A. Abijah. Then who's the first good king? It makes it easy because it's 2 A's, right? The list is going to go from A to Z. Asa, very good. And then a very famous good king. I told you, I always just remember his name because oddly I connect it to the cardinal that my family has passed down a tradition of naming cardinals Jehoshaphat. It's purely arbitrary, but for me, I just always think of Jehoshaphat. So you got the 2 A's, right? And you just got to remember this first couplet is Asa and Jehoshaphat. You got to come up with your own memory devices that work for you, right? So those are the first 2 good kings. Then Jehoshaphat, he has a son who also is a J. And that's going to be easy because it ties to the pattern from the other kingdom. So it should be easy for you to remember, oh, this sets off a chain of events. Who are the 2 that go together that are connected to the same names as this list? Yes, Jehoram and Ahaziah. You could say Joram for short. Right? A lot of people do that to distinguish them, but they're relatives. And so like here you have Ahaziah and Jehoram. Here you have Jehoram and Ahaziah. So this, though, this connects us to who? Which king is a judge to come and kill him when he's visiting his cousin? Jehu, right? So in that debacle, that slaughter, it leaves a power vacuum. So you just got to remember, oh, this sets off that mess in the middle, right? Before God restores good kings, there's a little bit of a mess. And who is that mess? It's a usurper, right? The usurper queen, Atalia. There's a lot of A's and J's, which that simplifies it in my mind. There's a lot of A's and J's, and it simplifies it. Atalia, right? So then after Atalia, all you got to remember is, what did I teach you? How many good kings come in a row after Atalia? It's a nice, clean set of 4. Right? Nice, clean set of 4. So you got to remember, okay, well, who was the little boy who was protected when Atalia was wiping out the Davidic line trying to secure her rule? Who's the little boy who was protected and restored? Another thing that should help you is they're all A's and J's, a lot of these, and he's got the same name. His name is shortened. What? Jehoash is the one here, and yes, he's another Jehoash, but we call him Joash. So you can distinguish them, right? Joash. And then to make it easy, in the middle, you got a little sandwich of Zias. Ziah, right? You might think A comes first in the alphabet, or Amazon is the biggest. Who's the other Ziah? And this is going to be a peg for you because you think, oh, the next Ziah is the one who, he died in the year that Isaiah, it says it explicitly, in the year that Isaiah's ministry and commission was given. This guy died, so you remember that's a peg where you say, oh, 740 BC. Isaiah comes to be anointed. Oops. You get it. So who is he? Who dies the year that Isaiah? Uzziah. Anybody know for extra points what his other name is? At least it's an Ayah. And of course, it's an A, Azariah. He's also known as Azariah. And then, like good bookends, J, A. If you want to use Azariah, it might be a way that helps you. J, A, A, J. You know, it's up to you. So what's the other J that bookends the last of those four good kings? Jotham. Good. I think like Jotham City. Jotham City. All right, so now how many good kings have we covered? Yeah, we covered 6. How many more do we have to go? All right, remember, I kind of hang the bad guys in between and around the good guys. Right? So after Jotham, this is my way of remembering who is the bad guy. There's a lot of J's, there's a lot of A's. There's also an affinity for what's a bad guy name that is very common here. Big name, famous name. Ahaz, right. Ahaziah comes up twice, and Ahaz makes a third if you want to count that. The Ahaz part of the name. Ahaz is in 3 names. He's very infamous. It's a very infamous name. So, I mean, if you break this into sections, it's not a lot. I mean, Jehoram and Ahaziah, and now you're going to have Ahaz. And if you know that Ahaz's son is one of the greatest kings in the whole history of the kingdom, Hezekiah, and there's a lot of important stories attached to this time period. Right, like Hezekiah being preserved when Jerusalem was sieged by Assyria. You remember what year that was? Survives? No, that was the northern. Yeah, so he survives a siege of the southern kingdom's capital, Jerusalem, and this is another good date to remember. These are the big dates. 701. Right, 701 BC. So you have Ahaz and Hezekiah. Then I always remember, well, Hezekiah's good. Then he has 2 bad sons, right? A son and a grandson. Does anybody remember? Just if you remember his first bad son, I feel like it's easier to remember the second. Yeah, Manasseh, really bad. And then, of course, it's an A. Amon, yeah. Yeah, so it's like 4, 1, 1, and 2. Josiah, the last, arguably the greatest son of David, right? And then I taught you have to memorize these last 4, but there is a pattern that helps me. There's a lot of J going on, and it's from A to Z, so that should help you to just put that Z there. And you start with a J, and you got to remember, what's the pattern of time? Right. 3 months, 11 years. 3 months, 11 years. So the first one, Jehoahaz. He's also known as Shallum. But, you know, that's the advanced level, so don't go confusing yourself. You will see it in the Bible, though. It says it. And what does Shallum mean? Well, shalom means peace. Shalom is a different form of the verb that means like retribution, payback, wholeness, right? To get your deserts. Jehoahaz, and then there are 2 that are very similar names, and I remember this by saying, oh, they go out of order. They're not in alphabetical order. So the K, the one with the K in his name goes first. Who is he? Jehoiakim. His name was changed from a very similar name. Remember, these first 2 are dealing with which country, Egypt or Babylon? The first 2 deal with Egypt, and then there's overlap, yeah. And the last 2 deal with Babylon, yeah. So there is some overlap with Jehoiakim, but Egypt changes his name from Eliakim. This is the hardest part of the list, arguably. The last 5, the usurpers in the northern kingdom, and the last 4, the sons of Josiah in the southern kingdom. But if you could just remember these. And there are helps like the 311, 311, and they're similar names. And they're even repeat names. If you can just like do some repetition and get this memorized, and maybe a couple little hard parts. There aren't many hard parts. I feel like a lot of this kind of flows. There's a lot of available memory devices we just covered that I think present themselves kind of easily. So the Jehoiakim is a similar name to who? Jehoiachin. So he's the grandfather of Zerubbabel, right? The governor of Judah when they returned from Persia. Jehoiachin. So he's the one that the emperor of Babylon shows mercy to, and he brings him out of the dungeon, has him eat at his table. So you just remember Jehoiachin was only 3 months, then he's taken off to Babylon. Right? And he's the one who's taken off, according to Jeremiah. God takes him off of his finger like a what? A signet ring or a sealing ring, yeah. But he's going to put his grandson Zerubbabel back on like a signet ring. And who is, so you have Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiachin. Jehoiachin is also known by some names that basically mean the same thing. Jehoiachin, Jeconiah. He's also Coniah. Those are things that are advanced, right? Like I said, the basic list is the peg, and as much as you can and want to hang on it, you go hang on it. I'm just giving you examples of things you can hang on it. He's also Jeconiah and Coniah. And then you might learn, oh, Coniah seems to leave out the Yah, right? The Yah in Coniah actually isn't maybe Jehovah. It's just part of the Hebrew verb. And he's actually, Coniah is then an epithet or an insult or a negative. But those are examples of things you hang on the peg. Like you might not be ready for that anytime soon. But if you get this, you have the kind of the coat rack at the front door. And you can build on it. So who is this Z at the end of the list? Zedekiah. And him, you should remember the very infamous, sad story of the end of the line of, seems like the end of the line of David. God preserves through prison, he preserves the line of David in Jehoiachin, a.k.a. Jeconiah and Coniah. But it seemed bleak because Zedekiah, right, what happened to him? Yeah, his sons, these sons of David, the line of David, are slaughtered in front of him, and that's the last thing he ever sees, and Nebuchadnezzar orders his eyes gouged out, and he brings him off to prison so that he can meditate on how Nebuchadnezzar not only conquered him, but wiped him out and humiliated him. Horrific. But that's God's wrath against sin and the faithlessness of the Davidic kingdom, right? The Davidic line. Any thought or question, especially along the lines of trying to remember? Maybe you have a suggestion. Maybe something occurred to you that might help you or someone else to remember. Yep. Okay. Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's an acronym, right? Some memorize people and places with help. That's good. I like that. Did anybody else think of a memory device or just happen to have one already coming in that you might share with us? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, if you just, I'm telling you, if you write it down, maybe it take you an hour, maybe more, maybe less, I don't know, but write them down several times. Challenge yourself, figure out what your memory devices are, and you will get it. You will get this. It's not as hard, at first it might seem a little intimidating, but it's not that many names, and they have relationships, and you already know the stories. You already know the stories. So if you could just make some key connections, you're going to get this in your brain. And it really does help me to write the first king and the last king, right? Maybe write out some big details like, oh, I know there are 19, so maybe I'll number it. I know there are no good kings, but there are 5 dynasties. And I also consider the last 5 to be the usurpers, even though people debate about Menahem and Pekahiah being father and son. But that's okay. We're just trying to memorize. So 5 usurpers. And then I find it easiest to do these 4 at once, but you might find it easier just to put the first name of each. And the one guy, it's, a zip. One goes quick. You think a zip, Zimri, Omri, Zimri. Right? And Omri, the first big house, Jehu, the next big house. Jehu comes after Omri because God raises up Jehu to judge Omri. And then if you can memorize the first name of the usurpers is Shallum, a lot of times it'll fall like dominoes for you. At least for me, it definitely does. If I can remember like one key piece of information, I kind of attach this group to that first name or something like that. Might be to the last name, however it works best for you. I feel like this list, even though it's not as neat as saying, 2, 2, 1, 4, 5, 5, it's easier for me for some reason. And I do tend to think, just remember the first 2, remember the last name, and then think of the good kings and their relationships. Like I know Jehoshaphat's son is Joram or Jehoram. And when I think of Jehoram, I think, Jehoram and Ahaziah, just like in the north, Ahaziah and Jehoram, right? And they happen to be judged at the same time by the same guy, Jehu. It's just you got to flip them. Whatever order it is here, if you already got it here, you flip it here. So you think, Ahaziah, Jehoram, so Jehoram and Ahaziah. And then Ahaziah, the Ahaz names are really important to the list in my memory device, right? Because I think, Ahaziah, this is after Jehu judges them, there's a power gap, right? A vacuum, and someone's going to step in. And you just got to remember the one woman, Athaliah. And then you just remember who's the first son, the one son who is preserved and protected from this bloodthirsty usurper queen. It was little old Joash by the maidservant. And he's also Jehoash, or Jehoash. But, and then the 2 Zias, and then the Jotham city. And if you want to use his alternate name instead of Uzziah, Azariah, you have a neat little J-A-A-J. And I find then, another Ahaz. Instead of Ahaziah, it's just Ahaz. Hezekiah always connects in my mind as the son of Ahaz. And then I know Hezekiah has 2 bad sons. You might think Ma. It's just that simple. Whatever actually sticks in your head. Yeah. Well, everybody here is related in a sense, right? But they're different families, yeah. Yeah. It's like an honor, the famous king who God said, walk before me and I'll make you fruitful, multiply you, and bless you, and preserve you. How well did Jeroboam I do with that promise? Yeah. He didn't do so well. He was given 10 tribes, right? There's a lot we could get into, but just trying to stay on the memorizing tip. Yeah. Yeah, they'll honor former kings and stuff. Or here you have related kingdoms, and they kind of, sons are named after their uncle. That's the case in the whole Jehu debacle. That's why they have the same names. They're all related. Right? Athaliah actually is, I believe, daughter of Ahab and maybe Jezebel. He had probably multiple wives with multiple children, but Athaliah. So before we end, any other anything else you want to share in the way of maybe your memory device or? The Northern Kingdom is 19. Yep, it's 19 and 19. But if you add the usurper woman, you have 20. And there's some other like little details people like you might count as a king. Or like, for example, Omri, he had a rivalry with Tibni, who set up a rival kind of kingdom in the north, you might say. So it's a matter of interpretation. But I think when you start, this is the easy level. And then if you want to get more advanced, you start to add those things. But I think you should add them to this as your basic template, right? These are the pegs, and then you can add more stuff on there. So yeah, there are a lot of little details you could add in here like that. Yeah. But I would say stick with this. Especially there's a nice symmetry, 19 and 19 with just one usurper woman. One dynasty with 8 good kings. 5 dynasties, maybe 6 if you want to count Menahem and Pekahiah. But this, to me, this is the easiest way to do it. You might find some tweaking of this to be the easier way to have a template. So, sound good? That's great, yeah, memorizing the books, memorizing the basic timeline that those books fit into, and the kings. These are really helpful, important details. Can someone pray for us, and we'll go prepare our hearts for the service?